I want to share the key to removing pain from your life, emotional and mental pain. And I have numerous other videos on this topic, but I'm going to be sharing with you from a book called The Power of Now by author Eckhart Tolle. The key to removing pain from your life is called surrender, and I'm going to read to you what author Eckhart Tolle says. He says to surrender is to accept the present moment unconditionally and without reservation. It is to relinquish inner resistance to what is. Inner resistance is saying no to what is through mental judgment and emotional negativity. It becomes particularly pronounced when things go wrong, which means that there's a gap between the demands or rigid expectations of your mind and what is. He calls this the pain gap. If you have lived long enough, you will know that things go wrong quite often. It is precisely at those times that surrender needs to be practiced if you want to eliminate pain and sorrow from your life. Acceptance of what is immediately frees you from mind identification and then reconnects you with beingness. Resistance is your mind. And let me add a side note here. It's not your soul resisting. It's not your higher self resisting. The only one resisting all situations in your life is your ego or your personality or your mind. You can use those three terms interchangeably. So we resist when we are not connecting with our higher self. We're resisting when we're not connecting with spirit. He goes on to say surrender is purely an inner phenomenon. In other words, resistance is not something that comes from outside of you. It's something you feel from inside based on a judgment that you have made about your situation. He then says it does not mean that on the outer level you cannot take action and change the situation. In fact, it is not the overall situation that you need to accept when you surrender, but just the tiny segment called the now moment. So breaking that down, you are only accepting that, gosh, this particular thing is happening exactly as it is right now in this moment. But as he said, it does not prevent you from taking action and steps to change things in your life. So for instance, if you have an abusive partner, that is something that's happening right now in this moment. They're screaming at you, they're yelling at you, they're being emotionally, verbally, or physically abusive to you right now in this moment. You're not going to change the now moment by resisting. The now moment is what it is. But it does not mean that you have to stay in that situation and accept it. The very lessons for you in that situation might be learning to love yourself enough to leave that situation and establishing and enforcing healthy boundaries. So there's a distinct difference between accepting what is right now and then making change. Let me give a more lighthearted example of acceptance followed by change. Last week, I got out of my car and wasn't paying attention. I opened the back door to grab some of my belongings, and I stepped on top of a wet meter cover. You know those metal things in the ground that cover the water meters and such things like that? Well, because it was wet, it was very slippery, and I quickly found myself sitting on my butt. It was bright and early in the morning, but as luck would have it, of course, the neighbor across the street had to be outside and witness the whole thing. So on top of falling flat on my butt, I had to also lose my dignity by having my neighbor witness the entire fall. I instantly reminded myself, it just is what it is. It happened, it's here, there's nothing I can do about it. And I just started laughing and laughing and laughing at myself. My neighbor asked me if I was okay, and I was laughing so hard I could barely mumble a yes, and then quickly ran in the house to hide my face. So what change did I make? I look at that little cover every single time I go to my car, and I always step over it now. I know that might be a silly example, but it's another example of surrender in the now moment, and then focusing on what changes are you going to make if you don't like your now moment to make it different. But again, resisting the now moment, whatever it may be, is what causes us pain and suffering. It's the judgment we make about the now moment, judging it as bad or evil or wrong or unacceptable. And then we live in the emotion of that judgment instead of accepting it for what it is. Someone cuts you off in traffic. You're not going to change it with non-acceptance. There is only acceptance at that moment if you want peace. And let me read what he also said here. Non-surrender hardens your psychological form, the shell of the ego, and so it creates a strong sense of separateness. The world around you, and people in particular, come to be perceived as threatening. The unconscious compulsion to destroy others through judgment arises, as does the need to compete and dominate. Not only your psychological form, but also your physical form, your body, becomes hard and rigid through resistance. The free flow of life energy through the body, which is essential for healthy functioning, is greatly restricted. So not only does it cause mental and emotional pain and suffering in us, but it also negatively impacts our physical body and well-being. So I bring this up to just have it be in the forefront of your mind that when you're going through something that you do not like, to catch yourself and say, what am I resisting right now? How can I change that into surrender in the present moment while also working to change it in the future?